Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. With a heavy sigh, Philip gathered his few personal belongings into a cardboard box. Family photos, a novelty mug, and a small potted plant, the sum total of his professional life reduced to these meager items. He trudged out of the building, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on him with each step. The drive home was a blur of self-doubt and anxiety. How would he tell his wife, Claire? They had a mortgage to pay, bills piling up. As he pulled into the driveway of their modest suburban home, Philip steeled himself for the difficult conversation ahead. Claire was in the kitchen when he walked in, her hands covered in flour as she kneaded dough for her famous homemade bread. She looked up, her smile fading as she saw the expression on Philip's face. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Philip set the box down on the counter and ran a hand through his graying hair. I lost my job, Claire. They're downsizing and I was let go." Claire's eyes widened. But to Philip's surprise, she didn't seem angry or disappointed. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, flour-dusted hands and all. "Oh, Phil," she murmured into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry. We'll figure this out together, okay?" Philip felt a lump form in his throat as he hugged her back. "I don't know what we're going to do," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire pulled back, her eyes shining with determination. "Actually, I might have an idea. You know my dress shop downtown? Business has been booming lately, and I've been thinking about hiring some help. Why don't you come work with me?" Philip blinked, taken aback by the suggestion. "Me? In a dress shop? Claire, I don't know the first thing about women's fashion." She laughed, a warm sound that eased some of the tension in Philip's chest. "You can learn, silly. Besides, your organizational skills would be a godsend. What do you say, want to give it a try?" Faced with the alternative of unemployment, Philip found himself nodding. "All right, I'll give it a shot, but don't expect me to start wearing the merchandise," he joked weakly. Little did Philip know how prophetic those words would become. The next morning, Philip found himself standing in front of Claire's closet, the quaint boutique his wife had poured her heart and soul into for the past 5 years. The window display showcased an array of colorful dresses and skirts, each one carefully arranged to catch the eye of potential customers. As he pushed open the door, a small bell tinkled overhead. The shop was awash in soft, flattering light, and the air was lightly scented with a floral perfume. Racks of clothing lined the walls, while mannequins posed in the latest styles throughout the space. Claire emerged from the back room, her face lighting up at the sight of her husband. "Welcome to your new workplace," she exclaimed, giving him a quick peck on the cheek. "Let me show you around." Over the next hour, Claire guided Philip through the basics of running the shop. She showed him how to operate the cash register, explained the inventory system, and gave him a crash course in the current fashion trends. "And this," she said, gesturing to a petite woman with spiky black hair who had just walked in, "is my business partner, Zoe. Zoe, this is my husband, Philip. He'll be helping out in the shop from now on." Zoe's eyebrows shot up as she looked Philip up and down. "Well, well," she drawled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Aren't you a tall drink of water? I bet you'd look fabulous in a wrap dress." Philip felt his cheeks heat up. I don't think—" "She's joking, honey," Claire interjected with a laugh. "Though I have to admit you do have the legs for it." As the days passed, Philip found himself settling into a routine at the shop. He quickly mastered the point-of-sale system and developed a knack for organizing the stockroom. However, he still felt out of his depth when it came to actually helping customers. One particularly slow afternoon, as Philip was straightening a rack of blouses, a middle-aged woman approached him with a desperate look in her eyes. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tinged with anxiety. "I have a dinner party tonight and I can't find anything to wear. Can you help me?" Philip froze, his mind racing. He glanced around for Claire or Zoe, but they were both busy with other customers. Taking a deep breath, he decided to wing it. "Of course," he replied, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "What kind of look are you going for?" The woman bit her lip. "Something elegant, but not too fussy. I want to look put together without seeming like I'm trying too hard." Philip nodded, thinking back to the countless times he'd watched Claire get ready for similar events. He led the woman to a rack of cocktail dresses, his eyes scanning the options. "How about this one?" he suggested, pulling out a sleek navy blue sheath dress with a subtle lace overlay. "It's classic and sophisticated, but the lace adds a touch of femininity. You could dress it up with some statement jewelry, or keep it simple with pearl earrings." The woman's eyes lit up as she took in the dress. "Oh, it's perfect. I never would have picked this out for myself, but I love it. Thank you so much." As she hurried off to the fitting room, Philip felt a surge of pride. Maybe he was getting the hang of this after all. Later that evening, as they closed up shop, Claire couldn't stop gushing about Philip's success. "I can't believe how well you handled that customer," she said, beaming at him. "You're a natural." Philip shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. "I just tried to think about what you would say. It wasn't so hard, really." Zoe, who was counting out the till, chimed in. "You know, Phil, you might have missed your calling. Ever thought about modeling some of our designs? We could use a male perspective in our marketing." Philip laughed, shaking his head. "Thanks, but I think I'll leave the modeling to the professionals. I'm happy just helping out behind the scenes." But as they locked up and headed home, Philip couldn't shake the idea from his mind. He found himself wondering what it would feel like to wear one of those dresses, to experience the swish of fabric against his legs, the gentle embrace of a well-fitted bodice. It was a strange, somewhat unsettling thought, but not entirely unpleasant. That night, as Claire slept peacefully beside him, Philip lay awake, his mind churning with new possibilities and unfamiliar desires. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Philip threw himself into his new role at the shop, soaking up knowledge about fabrics, cuts, and styles like a sponge. He discovered a genuine interest in fashion that surprised even himself, and his confidence in assisting customers grew by leaps and bounds. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the shop was practically empty. Claire had gone to meet with a supplier, leaving Philip and Zoe to mind the store. As they reorganized a display of summer dresses, Zoe couldn't help but notice Philip's lingering gaze on a particular floral sundress. "See something you like?" she asked, her tone teasing but kind. Philip startled, realizing he'd been caught staring. "Oh, I was just admiring the pattern," he mumbled, his cheeks flushing. Zoe's expression softened. "You know, Phil, there's nothing wrong with being curious. Have you ever thought about trying one on?" Philip's eyes widened. "What? No, I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" Zoe pressed gently. "It's just us here. No one would have to know." Philip hesitated, his heart racing. The thought had crossed his mind more times than he cared to admit, but he'd always pushed it away, afraid of what it might mean. But now, faced with Zoe's open, non-judgmental gaze, he felt a surge of courage. I suppose I could just see how it feels," he said quietly. Zoe's face lit up. "That's the spirit. Come on, let's find you something fabulous." She led him to the back of the store, rifling through racks with a practiced eye. Finally, she pulled out a deep green wrap dress with a subtle floral pattern. "This will look amazing with your coloring," she declared, holding it up to Philip's chest. "And the wrap style is forgiving if you're not sure about sizing. Go on, try it on." With trembling hands, Philip took the dress and retreated to the fitting room. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, hardly recognizing the nervous, excited man looking back at him. Slowly, he began to undress, his movements hesitant but deliberate. As he slipped the dress over his head, Philip was struck by the softness of the fabric against his skin. He fumbled with the wrap closure for a moment before figuring it out, cinching the waist to create a more defined silhouette. When he finally looked up at his reflection, he gasped. The man in the mirror was still recognizably Philip, but somehow different. The deep green of the dress brought out the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes, and the draping of the fabric softened his angular frame. He turned slowly, marveling at how the skirt swished around his legs. "Phil?" Zoe's voice called from outside. "How's it going in there? Can I see?" Taking a deep breath, Philip opened the fitting room door. Zoe's eyes widened as she took him in, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Oh, honey," she breathed. "You look absolutely stunning." Philip felt a warmth bloom in his chest at her words. For the first time in a long while, he felt beautiful. I like it," he admitted, smoothing his hands over the fabric. "It feels right, somehow." Zoe nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. "Sometimes we discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed. There's nothing wrong with exploring that, Phil. You should embrace it." As Philip changed back into his own clothes, his mind was a whirl with new possibilities. He knew this experience had changed something fundamental within him, and he wasn't sure he could go back to the way things were before. When Claire returned to the shop later that afternoon, she immediately sensed a change in her husband. There was a lightness to his step, a spark in his eye that she hadn't seen in years. "What's got you in such a good mood?" she asked, kissing him on the cheek. Philip hesitated for a moment before deciding to be honest. I tried on a dress today," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire's eyebrows shot up, but to Philip's relief, she didn't look disgusted or angry. Instead, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "And?" she prompted gently. "How did it make you feel?" Philip let out a shaky breath. "It felt amazing. Like I was finally seeing a part of myself I'd been hiding for years. Is that okay?" Claire's eyes softened as she took her husband's hands in hers. "Oh, Phil, of course it's okay. I love you, all of you. If wearing dresses makes you happy, then I'm happy for you. We can explore this together if you want." Philip felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes as he pulled Claire into a tight embrace. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "I love you so much." From that day forward, Philip's life took on a new dimension. With Claire and Zoe's encouragement, he began to experiment more with feminine clothing, first just in the privacy of their home, then gradually becoming bold enough to wear skirts and dresses to work at the shop. To his surprise and delight, the regular customers were overwhelmingly supportive. Many of them praised his bravery and complimented his style choices. Philip found that his newfound confidence and comfort in his own skin made him an even better salesperson. He could relate to customers on a deeper level, understanding their insecurities and desires in a way he never could before. One particularly memorable day, a statuesque woman with impeccably coiffed silver hair strode into the shop. Philip recognized her immediately as Vivian Hawthorne, one of the city's most prominent socialites. She was known for her extravagant parties and her discerning taste in fashion. Vivian's eyes locked onto Philip, who was wearing a fitted pencil skirt and a silk blouse in a soft peach color. Her perfectly manicured eyebrow arched as she approached him. "Well, aren't you a breath of fresh air?" she drawled, her voice rich with amusement. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Vivian Hawthorne." Philip straightened his spine, determined not to let her intimidate him. "Philip Thompson, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you. How can I assist you today?" Vivian's lips curved into a smile. "I'm hosting a charity gala next month, and I find myself in need of something unexpected. Something that will have all of Newport talking. Think you're up to the challenge, darling?" Philip felt a thrill of excitement course through him. This was exactly the kind of opportunity he'd been waiting for. "Absolutely, Mrs. Hawthorne. I have a few ideas in mind already, shall we?" For the next 2 hours, Philip and Vivian collaborated on creating the perfect ensemble for her gala. They pored over fabric swatches, debated hemlines, and discussed accessory options with the intensity of generals planning a battle strategy. By the time they were finished, Vivian had commissioned a custom gown that promised to be the talk of the season. As Vivian prepared to leave, she paused at the door, turning back to Philip with a calculating look in her eye. "You know, Mr. Thompson, you have quite the eye for fashion, and you wear it so well yourself. I don't suppose you'd be interested in attending my little soiree. I have a feeling you'd fit right in with my crowd." Philip's heart skipped a beat. An invitation to one of Vivian Hawthorne's legendary parties was not something to be taken lightly. I would be honored, Mrs. Hawthorne. Thank you." Vivian's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant send over the details. And do bring that charming wife of yours as well. I look forward to seeing you both there." As the bell tinkled behind Vivian's departing figure, Philip leaned against the counter, his head spinning. He couldn't wait to tell Claire about this unexpected turn of events. The night of Vivian's gala arrived, and Philip found himself standing in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom, hardly recognizing the person staring back at him. He was wearing a floor-length gown in a deep midnight blue that shimmered with tiny crystals, like a starry night sky. The off-shoulder neckline accentuated his collarbones, while the cinched waist gave him a surprisingly feminine silhouette. Claire appeared behind him, resplendent in a champagne-colored sheath dress. She wrapped her arms around Philip's waist, resting her chin on his shoulder. "You look absolutely breathtaking," she murmured. "Are you ready for this?" Philip took a deep breath, smoothing his hands over the silky fabric of his gown. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, a mix of nervousness and excitement bubbling in his chest. They arrived at Vivian's sprawling mansion just as the party was getting into full swing. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilled out onto the manicured lawn, where valets were parking a seemingly endless stream of luxury cars. As they made their way up the grand staircase to the entrance, Philip felt the weight of curious stares on his back. He straightened his spine, determined to hold his head high. Claire squeezed his hand reassuringly as they stepped into the glittering ballroom. For a moment, the buzz of conversation dipped as heads turned to take in the newcomers. Philip felt his cheeks heat up, but before he could second-guess himself, Vivian appeared before them, resplendent in the gown they had designed together. "Philip, darling!" she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. "You look absolutely divine. And this must be your lovely wife. Welcome, both of you. Come, let me introduce you to everyone." What followed was a whirlwind of introductions, each more surreal than the last. Philip found himself chatting with captains of industry, renowned artists, and even a minor European royal. To his surprise and delight, most people seemed more interested in his unique style and his insights on fashion than in questioning his choice to wear a gown. As the night wore on, Philip's confidence grew. He laughed, he danced, he sipped champagne that probably cost more than a month's rent. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen and accepted for who he was, not who others expected him to be. Near midnight, as the party was reaching its peak, Vivian clinked a spoon against her crystal champagne flute, calling for attention. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to their hostess. "My dear friends," Vivian began, her voice carrying easily across the ballroom, "I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Thanks to your generosity, we've raised over $500,000 for the Children's Hospital." She paused as applause rippled through the crowd. "But I also want to take a moment to recognize someone special. Philip Thompson, would you join me up here?" Philip felt his heart leap into his throat as he made his way to Vivian's side, acutely aware of every eye in the room on him. "This remarkable individual," Vivian continued, gesturing to Philip, "not only designed the gown I'm wearing tonight, but has also shown us all what it means to be truly authentic. In a world that often demands conformity, Philip has had the courage to be unapologetically himself. Let's raise a glass to Philip and to embracing our true selves, whatever form that may take." The room erupted in applause and cheers as Philip stood there, overwhelmed by the moment. As he looked out over the sea of smiling faces, his eyes found Claire's. She was beaming at him, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. In that moment, Philip knew that his life had irrevocably changed. What had started as a desperate move to find employment had led him on a journey of self-discovery he never could have imagined. He had found not just a new career, but a new way of being in the world, one that felt truer and more authentic than anything he'd experienced before. As the party continued around him, Philip made his way back to Claire's side. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered in his ear. "You've come so far." Philip held her tight, feeling a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied. "Thank you for loving me, all of me." As they swayed gently to the music, surrounded by the glittering elite of society, Philip marveled at the twists and turns his life had taken. From a mundane office job to becoming a rising star in the fashion world, all while discovering and embracing a part of himself he'd never known existed. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. Philip knew there would be challenges ahead. Not everyone would be as accepting as the people in this room, but he felt ready to face them. With Claire by his side and his newfound confidence, he was excited to see where this journey would take him next. As the night drew to a close and they prepared to leave, Vivian pulled Philip aside one last time. "You've made quite an impression tonight, darling," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of you in the future."
"The fashion world needs more voices like yours."
Philip smiled, feeling a surge of excitement at the possibilities her words hinted at.
"Thank you, Mrs. Hawthorne, for everything."
As they drove home in the early hours of the morning, the city quiet around them, Philip reached over and took Claire's hand.
"What do you think about taking a vacation?" he asked suddenly. "Just the two of us. Somewhere we can relax and, well, where I can be myself without worrying about what anyone thinks." Claire's face lit up at the suggestion. "That sounds wonderful, honey. Did you have anywhere in mind?" Philip grinned. "How about the Greek islands? I've always wanted to see the sunsets in Santorini." Claire laughed, a sound of pure joy that warmed Philip's heart. "Perfect, and just think of all the lovely sundresses you can wear."
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.